decisions on security-related matters being taken at par with men by the women there is a big message to all the countries which look up to India.
एम्प्लॉयमेंट-ओरिएंटेड इकोनॉमिक एक्टिविटी देश में किस तरह से देखना चाहिए?
सहयोग लेकर हमारे दोनों राज्य मंत्री और बाकी विभाग जो है उनको भी सहयोग लेकर ये कम से कम समय में पूरा करना ये सबसे बड़ा टास्क है.
To facilitate youth of our country how to have a respectable lifestyle through their own effort.
उस तक विकास की रोशनी ईमानदारी के साथ पहुंचे, डेवलपमेंट विद डिग्निटी हो.
सबसे पहला हमारा फिलॉसफी रहेगी सुविधा और सम्मान, ये दोनों खिलाड़ियों को मिले.
We are all small little members of that Prime Minister's big dream to create a new India.
Well, with 46 ministers in 2014, Narendra Modi took charge with a famous slogan, minimum government, maximum governance. But 3 years since, the cabinet has now grown 2/3 in size. The number now is 76 ministers, along with the Prime Minister. Good evening, I'm Ronojoy Banerjee, and thanks very much for joining us on this special. Now that the hoopla and the initial excitement around cabinet reshuffle is over, we here at CNBC TV 18 will attempt to do a cool-headed analysis of the challenges facing our new ministers as they took charge of the respective ministries earlier today. But first up, really the big headline and the big elevation for Nirmala Sitharaman, who's now going to be India's defense minister. She only becomes the first woman minister to hold that crucial portfolio for the first time on a full-time basis. Her appointment, of course, comes at a time when border tensions have scaled up with not just Pakistan but also with China. Her hands are clearly full. But let's hear out what the minister had to say when she took charge as the new defense minister earlier today.
One of the biggest challenges you're going to face, because there's a demand which is coming in from a lot of women in the army, is of that combative role. Is there something you want to look at, if it's possible?
I think during his brief stint twice, Jaitley ji has taken a lot of call on a lot of matters. I also want to see the files to see where this stands. And even earlier, when I was a member of the National Commission for Women, these matters of women empowerment and true empowerment of women were discussed. So I think this is a matter in which I will definitely look into all the things with an open mind, that open mind which is required for this matter, and not patronage.
Well, for more on what her challenges is going to be as she takes charge, Rituparna Bhuyan joins in with a list in his hand. Ritu, take us through the list you have.
The first set of challenges for Nirmala Sitharaman will be regarding defense procurement. Remember that the Indian government has released the strategic partnership model, which basically seeks to engage the Indian private sector in big-ticket defense deals. Nirmala Sitharaman will have to ensure that this strategic partnership model is a success, and for that she will have to ensure that Indian defense companies in the private sector, ties up with foreign companies for setting up an indigenous defense production industrial base in India. Within that, another set of challenges is regarding defense PSUs. Nirmala Sitharaman will have to ensure that Ordnance Factory Board and other defense PSUs function at optimal capacity, and of course also carry out disinvestment in many of these defense PSUs, which includes HAL and BEML. The second set of challenges relate to defense what is known as preparedness. Several CAG reports have pointed out that India has availability of only 10 days of ammunition in several sets of sectors of ammunition. This has to change. Thirdly is regarding what is known as having a lean and mean army. DB Shekharkar panel has given several recommendations. Nirmala Sitharaman will have to ensure that those recommendations are implemented. Last but not the least, you have HR issues. Remember that Indian Defence Forces are very sensitive about having pay parity with their civilian counterparts. That will have to be ensured by Nirmala Sitharaman. And last but not the least, she may also have to look at ensuring participation of Indian women in Indian Army, Indian Navy and Indian Air Force in combat role. So these are the top challenges that I foresee for our new Defence Minister.
All right, Ritu, many thanks. You've packed in quite a bit of information in that live of yours. But let's unpack some of those challenges with eminent journalist Ajay Shukla. Ajay, thanks very much for joining us here on CNBC TV 18. As you've written this morning in the newspaper, you've said that defense was this government's one of the key pillars of, as far as the Make in India program was concerned. And as part of that, we've seen action on the defense procurement procedure of 2016. More recently, the strategic partners policy that Rituparna was also talking about. But as you've also argued, that we have not seen much action on the ground as far as these are concerned. What can she do realistically to rejuvenate, revitalize and see that there's more traction from the private sector?
Well, I think the first thing that we need to be careful about is overburdening Nirmala Sitharaman with expectations. She has just 20 months to deliver. More than 3 years of this government's tenure have gone by. She has just 20 months, and it would take, according to even the most conservative estimates, it would take about 3 to 4 months for her to understand the defense ministry, to understand what she's actually dealing with. I recall when Mr. Pranab Mukherjee was appointed the defense minister in 2004, I went to him on the morning he was appointed and I asked him, what are your priorities? And he said, I haven't a clue. Because it's going to take me, I've never been defense minister, it's going to take me at least 3 months to understand what the ministry is about. And this is a massive ministry. It has 5 secretaries. It has 3 individual chiefs and an integrated defense staff. It directly controls close to 2 million men and women. So just to understand the ministry, just to understand the problems that are sort of going to have to be her priority, Nirmala Sitharaman will, according to my conservative estimate, take at least 3 to 4 months to get going. Then she gets her teeth into the job and starts dealing with the issues that are there. And these are not issues that can be just unpacked from a list and say, do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, because they are all extremely long-term structural issues. She can only continue some of the work that has been done by her predecessors, put in place certain policies, take forward certain policies, but before they actually start delivering, a certain time frame will take place. So it's not like Nirmala Sitharaman is coming, boom, what's she going to do now? What's her delivery period? It's still a very long, drawn and slow process that the Defense Ministry takes to move forward.
So therefore, we cannot realistically expect a 100-day agenda, so to speak, as far as Defense Ministry is concerned. As you said, it at least takes 3 to 4 months to really get a hang of this ministry. But Ajay, at a more fundamental level, because at a time, when the army is crying out for sort of upgrading of the military equipments, there is an urgent need to address some of the shortage in equipments in the army. There is a sense that that you need a minister who can sort of really negotiate with the finance ministry to increase the defense budget. Considering the personal equation that Nirmala Sitharaman enjoys with Mr. Arun Jaitley, do you think that will come more naturally? It will be easier for Nirmala to really sort of convince North Bloc for a higher outlay for defense?
No, I don't think it will be possible to make a higher outlay for defense. Given the government's priority on social sector spending, the priority on other job creation, employment, skilling and so on, to spend more on defense is something that would require to be cleared right at the prime ministerial level. I don't think it can be cleared at the level of the finance minister itself. But the problem with the defense ministry is not really a shortage of money. You would recall that every year a large sum of money is surrendered, unspent, back to the finance ministry. The problem is the procedures. The problem is to get the defense ministry to move more fast, more decisively, with greater clarity, and to get the military and the ministry moving together in sync on many of these issues. It's more a question of coordinating movement rather than just throwing money at the problem. If money was all that was needed, the ministry would not be surrendering 7,000 crore rupees as it did from the capital budget last March.
All right, Ajay Shukla, we'll leave it at that. Thank you very much. Always a pleasure to speak with you and get your informed opinion and perspective on this. Thanks very much for joining in. Let's now focus on the other big headline, the other minister who made headlines, and that was Piyush Goyal, who's now been elevated as the new railway minister. Now, railways will be the third portfolio for Goyal, who has been Minister of State with independent charge for power, coal, new and renewable energy and mines. Remember, as Power Minister, Piyush Goyal initiated several projects like electrification of villages, the Uday scheme, more importantly, that was really an attempt to revive the debt-laden power distribution companies. And here's what the man himself had to say earlier today when he took charge as the new railway minister.
रेल मंत्रालय के आगे का विजन बनाया है, जिस प्रकार से इन्वेस्टमेंट आए रेलवेज में, जो गत 70 वर्षों में इन्वेस्टमेंट आया, वो कैसे 5 वर्षों में इन्वेस्टमेंट रेलवेज में आए, कैसे रेलवेज में सुरक्षा, कैसे रेलवेज में उपभोक्ताओं की, कंज्यूमर्स, पैसेंजर्स की सुविधाएं बढ़ाना रास्ता निर्धारित कर दिया है, जिसपे माननीय मनोज सिन्हा जी, माननीय राजन गोहेन जी और मुझे उस पटड़ी पे चलना है जो सुरेश जी ने हम सबके लिए निर्धारित किए.
That was Piyush Goyal crediting Mr. Suresh Prabhu's predecessor for many of the changes that we've seen in railways. But his hands will be full, and Ashpreet Sethi joins in with her list of what the challenges, immediate challenges for Piyush Goyal would be. Ashpreet.
As the 39th Railway Minister, a lot is at hand as far as Piyush Goyal taking charge is concerned. Remember, his predecessor, Suresh Prabhu, had faced a lot of questions as to how 346 train accidents had taken place, where 80% were due to derailments. We'll have to wait and see as to how Piyush Goyal turns around the railway story, because remember, the other challenges will be as to how will he ensure that the economics at the railway sector improves, also as to how he will ensure that passengers who are shifting to the airline space because of the Udan scheme comes back to the national transporter, what has to be done as far as increasing the freight basket, and the most important thing being Narendra Modi's pet project as far as bringing the bullet train, whether that will be taken off track or not. That is something that Piyush Goyal will have to work towards. We'll have to wait and see whether all these challenges will be met before the 2019 elections.
All right then, for what the challenges will be for our new railway minister, who better to tell us than the former railway minister himself, Mr. Dinesh Trivedi. Thank you very much, Mr. Trivedi, for joining us from Kolkata. Let's address the elephant in the room, because the reason why Mr. Suresh Prabhu wanted to resign was because of the spate of railway accidents. And since 2014, the numbers are quite staggering: 346 railway accidents, and 80% of were caused due to derailments. Realistically, how can our new minister address some of these safety concerns?
See, Ron, first of all, let me congratulate Piyush Goyal, who's a very dear friend of mine and a very competent person. You put him in any ministry and he'll deliver. Now, having said that, the first thing is we have to understand the strength of Indian Railways. Indian Railway is one of the best organizations in the world. If you starve the Indian Railways and if you expect that Indian Railways is going to pay you interest or dividend on your investment, that used to be colonial. So the first challenge, if you ask me, the infrastructure, the foundation has been shaken up. You have got to rebuild the entire foundation of the Indian Railways. Suresh Prabhu, I'm not blaming him, but yes, your priority has been shifted. Indian Railway is all about operation. And if I am running a transportation system, I better be safe. So I always used to be amused when we were told that there is something called a safety fund. I mean, this is part of the package. If I'm running an airline, I can't have a separate safety fund. That is part of my depreciation. Now, if you are not understanding the entire investment philosophy, then I'm afraid things will be as usual and nothing will change.
All right, Dinesh Trivedi, thank you very much. And, good to see an opposition leader also congratulating the new minister, Piyush Goyal, who takes charge, and his hands are clearly full. with his new responsibility. Dinesh Trivedi, always a pleasure to speak with you. Thanks very much for joining in with that quick perspective. But while Railways has gone to Mr. Piyush Goyal, Suresh Prabhu will now be looking after that ministry and has now been given the charge of Commerce and Industry portfolio in the cabinet reshuffle. His shift also comes after Suresh Prabhu, of course, as I said, offered to resign as a railway minister following a spate of accidents. Let's hear out what Suresh Prabhu said on taking up this new challenge.
हमारा जीडीपी का जो रेशियो है, जीडीपी का प्रोफाइल में ज़्यादा बदलाव लाने की ज़रूरत है. शेयर ऑफ मैन्युफैक्चरिंग इनटू जीडीपी हैज़ टू इंक्रीज, और वो करने के लिए मेक इन इंडिया प्रोग्राम, स्टार्टअप प्रोग्राम, डूइंग बिजनेस इन इंडिया, ये सभी चीज़ों के ऊपर बड़ी मात्रा में तेज़ी से काम करने की जो ज़रूरत है, ये काम ये मंत्रालय करेगा. हो भी रहा है और उसमें और भी बढ़ोतरी लाके और ज़्यादा तेज़ी से हम काम करेंगे. ज़्यादा से ज़्यादा एम्प्लॉयमेंट ओरिएंटेड मैन्युफैक्चरिंग, एम्प्लॉयमेंट ओरिएंटेड इकोनॉमिक एक्टिविटी देश में किस तरह से देखना चाहिए.
And Timsi Jaipuria joins in with her list of what the immediate challenges will be for the new minister. Timsi, over to you.
Well, it's not a surprise that Suresh Prabhu will have a lot on his plate as he steps into Commerce Ministry. His most pressing task to begin with will be to push for a permanent solution on the public stock holding limits at the WTO meeting in the December at Argentina when it comes to food security. Apart from this, he would also have to script a revival path for exports, as that has been outlined the most key important area for India's growth to come back on the growth path. Apart from this, he would also have to take stock of existing free trade agreements, especially quite a few which have already been signed and are skewed against India, especially to look at the example of South Korea, where South Korea's zero import duty benefit for gold was being misused of late. Apart from this, some of the key challenges that will be on the focus area for Suresh Prabhu include pushing for Make in India, especially at the time when GDP growth is slipping, and Finance Minister Arun Jaitley has highlighted that manufacturing growth has bottomed out. Not to forget, FDI pushing for more foreign direct investments and getting more money into the country is also an area that Prabhu will look into.
Well, thanks for that. Indeed, a lot of complicated trade negotiations on the table, as she was saying. WTO ministerial in December, and then even the RECF, the Regional Cooperation Economic Pact, is also, the negotiations are at a tricky stage. But let's slip into a break. But on this other side, importantly, we look at the other two new, fresh faces in the Council of Ministers. Mr. R.K. Singh, former Home Secretary, who will be taking charge of Ministry of Power, and Mr. Hardeep Singh, former IFS officer. On that with guests when we return.